January 27th meeting of the local superintendent's advisory council. Today's meeting is, of course, being conducted via video teleconference. This meeting must comply with the requirements of the Open Meetings Act. Accordingly, the public may view the meeting via a link provided in the advertised agenda. Members, as you know, please ensure your camera is on, your microphone is working, and that you can be seen throughout the duration of the meeting. Please silence or turn off other electronic devices that may cause disruption to your sound feed. As mandated by KRS 156007, the charge of the council is to advise the chief state school officer and the Kentucky Board of Education concerning the development of administrative regulations and education policy. The chief state school officer shall submit all proposed administrative regulations and educational policies for review by the council prior to seeking approval of the Kentucky Board of Education. At this time, we will do a formal roll call.
Good morning. When your name is called, please state your name clearly and indicate that you are present. Brian Alexander. Chair Kirk Biggerstaff.
Kirk Biggerstaff here.
Harry Burchett.
Harry Burchett here.
Tom Cochran.
Tom Cochran, present.
Will Hodges. Dennis Messer.
Dennis Messer here.
Sheila Mitchell.
Sheila Mitchell here.
Charla Six. Russ Tilford.
Here.
David Trimble.
David Trimble here.
Henry Webb.
Henry Webb here.
Chair, you have a quorum.
All right, thank you so much. To begin our meeting, we invite Commissioner Fletcher to provide an update on the Kentucky Department of Education.
Thank you, Chair Biggerstaff, and I hope everyone is warm. I hope that our students are safe across the Commonwealth. And as we were talking about a little earlier, we definitely got a mixed bag of precipitation across the state, everything from freezing rain to snow. I know up north we had 12 inches or greater of snow, whereas in my area we were probably around 4 inches with maybe a layer of sleet ice on top of that, whereas in the south primarily freezing rain and ice. So again, I hope everyone's safe and warm, and thankful that a lot of our people are getting their power back on as we move into this bitterly cold time. Last night was rough. So again, good to see everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you for making the time. I do have a couple of items. I'm very excited about our agenda today, especially the certification. I can't wait to hear some updates or some input from our superintendents about certification structures. And we have Todd Davis that'll be giving a presentation on that. And of course, we also have two of our regulations for review. One deals with the KHSAA, and then also the other deals with, I believe, with financial literacy is the primary focus with that. But two updates I would like to share with our LSAC members before I turn it back over to the chairman. Of course, this is legislative session. This is a busy time. I'm getting phone calls sometimes late at night, sometimes on weekends from legislators, which is a good thing. I'm very appreciative of that, talking about bills. I'm not saying we always agree, but at least we're having a lot of conversations as we move forward. Of course, one of our primary bills, I gave an update in the superintendent webcast, but I do want to give just a few points about House Bill 257, which is the accountability model bill. And again, I do want to make it very clear that the original Kentucky United We Learn language and what was approved through LSAC, we had our discussion there, and also through our board, we actually wrote legislation that matched that as word for word of what was approved in. Of course, when you talk with legislators, there's been some movement back and forth and some things that were put in. I was in probably 2.5 to 3 hour meetings that talked about what the accountability model will look like. And what happened is with House Bill 257, which I think has some very positive points. So I do want to go through some things on here that are changes from the original accountability proposal. First of all, and again, I'll try to limit this down to 7. I don't want to give the full presentation like I did in the superintendent webcast. You can look at that for more, but first of all, in the CSI calculation, math, reading, science, and social studies are included in the CSI calculation. That's a little different than the original proposal. On-demand writing and editing mechanics is actually moved out of the CSI calculation, and writing has more of a across the curriculum focus and policy when it comes to House Bill 257. The color ratings are still in the bill. They were taken out, of course, with the original. Color ratings are there. And also, I think it's important for this group to note that LSAC still approves the cut scores for what is a red, orange, yellow, blue, green school. So a green then blue school. So LSAC still approves those cut scores for that. So keep that in mind as we move forward. Big positive that everybody was very had overwhelming response on this. Change has been replaced with individual student growth. I think that's a huge positive. Then also, too, some other nuances like local accountability language. One of the things that we heard early on that local accountability from a legislator standpoint meant comparability. And we weren't looking for comparability when it comes to local accountability. So it's that language is actually changed to local indicators of quality. Of course, some districts may call it local measures of quality, local other things, but in legislation, the local accountability language has been moved out, and then the local measures or local indicators of quality is what's inserted there. There is a financial incentive. This was something that actually was not my idea. This came from legislators, so I do applaud the fact that they put this in there of a $10,000 per district if you have a local accountability model, plus an additional $3 per student. Now, fully aware that this doesn't cover the cost, but at least there's some type of financial incentive that adds into that to help out with some local accountability. In order to get that financial incentive, there's basically three things you have to have. You have to have your local committee selected, you have to have indicators identified, and you also have to have a timeline for implementation, and then that would kick in. In the current bill draft, in 257, that would be a recurring expenditure within the budget. In other words, if you have a local accountability model, you would get that incentive every year moving forward, not just to start it. Now, I will say there's some pushback on that. There's a lot of it, in order to save money, a lot of our legislators have talked about maybe just having that as a one-time incentive to get people started. So keep that in mind. Also, too, another change in there deals with there's trigger language. The original bill had every district shall have a local accountability model, and this has been changed to if 60% of our districts have a local accountability model, then every district shall have a local accountability model within the next, I think, 2 years is what's in the bill. Now, keep in mind, if 257 goes through, these changes will not occur until the 2026-2027 school year. So we're still taking the same test. We still have the same model for the spring because, again, it would be we couldn't turn that around quickly enough. So changes would begin in 2026-2027 if 257 passes. I do want to keep in mind, too, if there's several other bills, I do expect a bill dealing with principal training to come out pretty soon. We have been working some with Senator West on that bill. Again, there's a lot of good things in that bill, and I think that's something that's needed. Also, we're looking at financial funding. Senator West is going to be asking for funding for that. And again, that's still in draft process, but very excited about that. But there's numerous educational bills out there, and you can follow that on the legislature.ky.gov and look for those bills. If you have any specific education questions on bills, feel free to reach out to us. Dr. Brian Perry is basically lives, eats, and breathes this, and we're over at the annex on a very regular basis. Brian's there probably almost daily, especially in the session. I'm over there quite a bit, if not just for meetings. Sometimes I'll just go over to have lunch, just to be able to talk with legislators to give those type of meetings. So again, any questions, please contact us. We'll do our best to give your input. But I highly recommend, and you, those of you in this room, I know each of you, talking with your legislators goes a long way, because a lot of times when I talk to a legislator, the first question they'll ask is, how do superintendents feel about this? And things of that nature. So that's always important. The other update that I wanted to give is, many of you may already know this, but our Kentucky Board of Education has changed our meetings and how often they occur. The even number months is our typical regular meeting, if you will. We conduct business in a normal manner, give the awards, things of that nature. We're still keeping that structure of every even month. We'll be quote unquote conducting our normal business, if you will. The odd months are designated for learning agendas. Sometimes districts will even they'll call it working sessions. Is what a lot of times many of you have working sessions to kind of educate your your board members and allow that input prior to. For us, a great example is the very first one we had in January, really focused on school finance for our board members to talk about school facility funding, to talk about SEEK. We even talked about grants and how much funding was actually there as it relates to a statewide look. So that first meeting dealt a lot with just primarily just there's no decisions as far as business went, as far as approving regulations, things of that nature. It was more of a learning session. So the odd months will look like that, whereas the even months are the 2-day meetings that you each of you know what to expect in those. But again, those are two major changes or two major items that I wanted to go over. Be happy to answer any questions as you folks see fit.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Fletcher. I appreciate the information. We will now move on. We now have 2 regulations for our review and action. We welcome KDE Deputy Commissioner and General Counsel Todd Allen, and Kentucky High School Athletic Association Commissioner Julian Tackett and General Counsel Chad Collins to present proposed amendment to 702 KAR 7065, designation of agent to manage middle and high school interscholastic athletics.
Good morning. Superintendents, we appreciate you all being with us this morning. As you all know, the Kentucky Board of Education designates the Kentucky High School Athletics Association as its agent to manage middle and high school interscholastic athletics. As part of their process, they conduct an annual meeting of member schools and have discussions about any changes that are necessary in their bylaws, in their policies, and then bring those before the State Board of Education and propose those changes to the regulation. So this is part of that annual process, and I will turn it over to KHSA Commissioner Tackett to go through the recommended changes that are in the regulation.
We are not hearing sound.
Yeah, Commissioner Tackett, we're not getting any sound from you all.
Do we want to move on to the next item while they're having issues, or?
It looks like they're giving the thumbs up. I think maybe they're going to change rooms or areas. So if we could move on to the next item and come back to them, I think that'd be great.
Okay, so I guess next we would welcome KD Deputy Commissioner Thomas Tucker, Mickey Ray Marinelli, and Sarah Medley from the Office of Teaching and Learning to present proposed amendments to 704 KAR 3305, minimum requirement for high school graduation. Are you all ready to present on that? I know it's a little bit of impromptu here. All right, thank you.
Good morning, Chair Biggerstaff and members of LSAC and Commissioner Fletcher. We have a quick technical amendment we would like to bring before you all regarding KAR 3:305. 2 quick things, superintendents, members of LSAC. I had a little PTSD as a former superintendent, seeing all that snow out there and having to make a call for a snow day. So glad I don't have to make that call today. And secondly, I want to thank the OTL team for working across, and see Mickey and Sarah here, for working across the agency, particularly with the Office of Career and Technical Education, to address this amendment relative to financial literacy, as well as really help promote AP business and personal finance as a course to help meet that requirement. Now we'll turn over to our Chief Academic Officer, Mickey Ray.
Thank you, Dr. Tucker. So good morning, superintendents. We are here today because in the 2025 session, House Bill 342 was passed, and it amended KRS 158.1411 to require students entering grade 9 on or after July 1 of 2025 to successfully complete a 1-credit elective course in financial literacy. So as a result of that statutory change, we are bringing forward today the minimum high school grad regulation. And the changes that were made to conform to statute are found in sections 3 and 4. And so we've added language to say successfully meet the financial literacy requirements pursuant to KRS 158.144 and standards as established in 704 KR Chapter 8, so aligned to those financial literacy standards. So that occurs in Section 3 for all students. That language is replicated again in Section 4 as it relates to the early graduation programming. And then Sarah Medley, our policy advisor, also worked to update the document incorporated by reference, the intent form for the early graduation program, just to make sure that it was evident there and is all aligned. So happy to address any questions you may have this morning, but pretty straightforward technical change today.
All right. Thank you all. Do we have any questions? All right, I would ask the council to entertain a motion to recommend approval of the amendment to 704 KER 3305 minimum requirement for high school graduation. Is there a motion?
It's Tom Cochran, Johnson County. I make that motion.
Thank you, Tom. Do I have a second?
I second it.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? At this time, we will have a roll call vote. Thank you.
Again, I will state your name and then you please restate your name and record your vote. Brian Alexander. Kirk Biggerstaff.
Kirk Biggerstaff, yes.
Harry Burchett. Tom Cochran.
Tom Cochran, yes.
Will Hodges. Dennis Messer.
Dennis Messer, yes.
Sheila Mitchell.
Sheila Mitchell, yes.
Charla Six.
Charla Six, yes.
You have recorded your attendance. Russ Tilford.
Russ Tilford, yes.
David Trimble.
David Trimble, yes.
Henry Webb.
Henry Webb, yes.
The motion carries.
And Ms. Jones, Harry Burchett, yes. I think I was muted.
Thank you. I've updated that. Thank you. The motion carries.
All right, thank you. I think now we will circle back to our KHSAA representatives.
Thank you, Dr. Biggerstaff. Todd, are you hearing us okay this time?
Yes, we can
Thank
hear
you.
you. Thank you.
Thank you. I made the kind of colloquial comment earlier. It must feel like Groundhog Day for some of you because we were just here in the late fall. But I think one of the things that Mr. Allen and Mr. Collins have worked on is to get us back on a little earlier cycle. The risk of that is exactly what Dr. Fletcher was talking about earlier, that we're in the middle of a legislative session. And obviously, we are frequently a target because everybody that's been in a batter's box in Little League is an expert in sports. So we're well aware of that. What you have before you is very minor changes and primarily in the documents incorporated by reference. There was a substantive change passed by our schools, which lessens by a fractional amount the number of kids who are subject to the transfer rule by allowing students who have played a minimal amount of participation to become eligible at their new school. And this was a targeted shot. I don't mind elaborating on this for a second, but we have been kind of shooting with a shotgun at transfers for several years. Our schools have expressed concerns. This was more shooting with a rifle at people that in some areas are putting kids into the first game to, quote, lock them into a school and don't play them again, or put them into other situations where this rule would apply in an era of school choice that obviously doesn't play well together with some of the legislative intent. So we were able to get the delegates to approve a change in bylaw 6. We had a change, and that's the domestic transfer rule. That's the one you hear the most about. It is not a free transfer, and I'd like to have a comment after we're done talking about the changes with the superintendents on this group. I have tremendous amount of respect for the job you all have, but we're going to be asking for some help from you all. Secondly, there was a minor amendment to our foreign exchange rule. We had some conflicts in the rule. Mr. Collins can detail the exact changes, but I think you can see they're simply designed to align them with the domestic rule. And we've had a number of kids, including a case recently, where it borderlines on trafficking of a student. People are being brought over from foreign countries to line up to play for a collegiate basketball team. And then, oh, by the way, we still want to enroll them in a school. And when that doesn't work out, the street handlers or agents or whatever are just walking away. We're really trying to make a targeted effort at that. And that's one of the reasons we needed to polish up bylaw 7. The other one is kind of innocuous for most of our schools, but we changed the rule 3 years ago at the delegate meeting, where it doesn't matter if an out-of-state team is a member of their state's association or not, you can play them. But we had not picked up all the places in bylaw 22 that governs contracts that needed to be changed. So those were the primary things. A couple of polishing items in the policies documents, which most of that is around sports medicine and officiating. So I think that it's a fairly innocent year so far, but we also know we're 2 weeks into the session that's now going to have a couple of extra days added to it when they revise their calendar. So we really don't know what will come between now and final adoption. Mr. Collins, do you have anything else you want to be sure we point out?
There we go.
All right.
There we
Okay,
go.
there we go.
I would echo everything that Commissioner Tackett was putting forward. I think I just want to publicly thank Mr. Allen and Dr. Fletcher for kind of getting us on this routine, a bit more timing specific to make sure that we're coming before you guys with these changes. Commissioner Tackett pointed out the major changes, and I think he is right. You know, when it comes to some of our international foreign exchange students, we've had disturbing trends. We had one that was pending the other day, and the kid disappeared from the school, literally disappeared from the school. Didn't withdraw, don't know what happened, but he's no longer there. And was going through the administrative process and did not get a favorable recommended order. So just trying to figure out how we manage that, how we bring the right attention to that to make sure that there's not any undue influence in something more broad than just athletic participation. I think as everybody here knows, that we need to have the best interest of these kids and these students, and we want to make sure that nothing untoward is going on towards them. But everything else in the documents that are before you, I think, accurately reflect the changes, and we look forward to implementing them.
Before you take action, if you don't mind, let me just ask something of the superintendent. It's more for when you're driving down the road. We're getting considerable mixed messages from your peers about the transfer rule and its restrictions. A number of students that are coming into schools, if there's any hiccup at all, the superintendents are saying they're about kids, they need to be eligible, but if that student's leaving their school, we need to tighten down the transfer rule. And we need some more unified direction. I shared this with Jim the other day when he was asking me about doing something on their podcast on the 13th of February. I shared with him that one of the things I hope to pull out is some ideas, because obviously when you're in a regulatory position as we are, and we don't, the KHSAA is actually 3 entities, as you know. There's an office staff, and then there's the 291 schools. And we really believe the 291 schools are the membership. And when they pass a rule, we feel compelled to adhere to it. Even if it's painful for people. But that doesn't seem to be a united opinion. So, we got a lot of veteran superintendents on this call. If driving down the road, if you come up with an answer, is it a think tank of people? What is happening? We are seeing in the same district athletic directors who are trying to fight in the trenches for the rules they passed being basically usurped or overturned by their superintendent, even to the point of being told not to attend an appeals hearing. Things like that. So we really need to know how our school leaders feel, and you all are the leaders, like it or not. That's, people ask me about what the staff here thinks, and ultimately I guess I have to give the final opinion. You have to give your final answer in the districts, and we really need some, I think, more direction. And it may not be unified. We have fought. We have not really fought. We have objected to open transfers. We continue to object on behalf of the school superintendents to bills like have been introduced already this year. I'm meeting with the sponsor of a bill tomorrow, who's once again proposed the age-old version of the Tim Tebow bill, which would require a student to do nothing in your school and still be able to play sports for your school. And the superintendents have objected to that from Paducah to Ashland, and we are going to continue to object to that. There may be some middle ground being discussed about them being part, as you know, the legislature is looking at definitions of part-time enrollment, et cetera. So are there other avenues? But this particular bill that's totally disconnected these kids and still wanting them to play, we feel like you want us to object to, and we're going to continue to object to it. And so if there's feelings on that kind of thing that change, but sorry, I went 2 minutes. I apologize for delaying your meeting, Dr. Fletcher and Dr. Biggerstaff, but I just think it's important to get that kind of thing out there. This set of regulations you're dealing with now is probably the smallest group of changes we've had in years. But we don't know what's going to happen between now and early April. Thank you very much for the time and attention.
Thank you. Do we have any discussion or questions? All right. If not, I would ask the council to entertain a motion to recommend approval of the amendment to 702 KER 7065 designation of agent to manage middle and high school interscholastic athletics. Is there a motion?
Harry Burchett, Harrison County, I make a motion.
All right, we have a motion, and do I have a second?
It's David Trimble, I'll second.
All right, thank you all. At this time, we will have a roll call vote.
Again, please state your name and record your vote. Brian Alexander, Kirk Biggerstaff,
Kirk Biggerstaff, yes.
Harry Burchett,
Harry Burchett, yes.
Tom Cochran,
Tom Cochran, yes.
Will Hodges, Dennis Messer,
Dennis Messer, yes.
Sheila Mitchell,
Sheila Mitchell, yes.
Charla Six,
Charla Six, yes.
Russ Tilford,
Russ Tilford, yes.
David Trimble,
David Trimble, yes.
Henry Webb.
Henry Webb, yes.
The motion carries.
All right, thank you. The next item on our agenda is a discussion related to certification structure led by Todd Davis, Division Director in the KD Office of Education, Educator Licensure and Effectiveness.
Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone is staying warm and safe. The roads are not fun this morning. I can attest to that firsthand. Just a couple of things before we get started. This is an opportunity for you to hear some information on the certification structure work group and have some discussions that it will not require any action from the council. But we certainly want your input and your feedback when we get to a later portion here in the session. So if you want to advance to the next slide, please. The certification work group was initially in October of 24, the PSB requested that OELE establish a work group to review current regulations and our alignment as far as our structure of grade bands and all the parts associated with our grade bands and certification to ensure that we meet the needs of the districts and we're best aligned for what supports Kentucky as a whole. In December of 24, the work group was established, and this slide just shows a representation. This stakeholder group is made up of about 33 members, multiple members from certain areas, like we have multiple superintendents, we have multiple board members, education preparation providers, as well as legislators. We've got 3 sitting legislators that are on this work group as well. We have HR representatives, we have KEA representatives, KASA has recommended multiple members as well. So a very robust group that we meet monthly to discuss this work. And so I'll give you a little bit of background of what's happened between now and the original ask and where we're headed and why we need your input. Next slide, please. So initially, we were asked to review the grade bands, and through that work, we looked at national data. We looked at our partner or our bordering states, and then looked at nationally as well as through our education preparation providers, and then got a lot of feedback from our districts looking at our configurations and trying to meet the needs of our districts. In June of 25, we made a recommendation as a work group to the board to consider some slight changes to our current grade bands. The elementary or the preschool and kindergarten was recommended to remain the same due to the vast difference in standards for interdisciplinary preparation and elementary. However, they did feel strongly that they would like to see a grades 1 through 3 endorsement if the board would consider that. For elementary, this one is currently we're K5. We have 2 caveats with elementary. You can teach grade 6 if it's in the same building as grade 5 or if it's self-contained. And so the group felt that based on again, the data, the national data and our districts, that the K6, making it a permanent and expanding that to a full certificate and make it a K6 rather than include the caveats. For middle and high school, was just a slight change, adding 1 grade level to each, moving down in each area to allow more overlap. For middle school, it was to extend 5th grade down to 4th. This would allow middle school teachers to teach content-specific courses in the elementary setting due to many of our districts utilizing the departmentalization of our content classes. And so this would allow some expansion of certificates to cover those content areas, but would be limited to those content areas. So they would not be qualified as a self-contained elementary teacher. And same thing for the secondary, for high school, was to extend down to grade 7 to include more opportunity as we see specifically our math content. Districts are starting to utilize the earlier grades to obtain those courses and meet graduation requirements. So this would allow a little bit more overlap and some flexibility in trying to meet those needs. Next slide, please. So the next step was to start reviewing our content certification areas, specifically the sciences, looking at our hard to fill positions. Special education is another one that came up, as well as mathematics, but math is a little bit different. And we'll talk about that here in just a few minutes and how that differs. Next slide, please. So for instance, looking at the sciences, there's several, well, there's 30 states right now that offer a general science. And so Tennessee, much like Kentucky, is very specific, single subject certification. You have to major in the area in the sciences, and you're limited as far as the courses that you can teach in those areas. For states like Colorado, they have a general science that allows them to teach all contents. And as I mentioned, next slide, please. And as I mentioned, 30 states do have some type of general science certificate. Now that varies in practice and how that's utilized. Some are very limited. Some, like Oregon, allows general science to teach up to 11th grade. However, in our discussions, the challenge we face is that when you talk about mathematics, math is very sequential in how courses are set up. The sciences are not nearly as sequential, so it creates some challenges, but Oregon has figured out a way to do it, and so those are things that we're discussing as well. But again, 30 states offer some type of general science. Next slide, please. So just an idea of what our current states have. Right now, we'll talk about ours. We're very specific with our sciences. You have to major in chemistry, physics, biology, or earth science. And then you are limited in the content areas that you can teach in those courses. Our math, middle school math and secondary math, but then our special education, we have the LBD, MSD. We also have the hearing impaired with sign proficiency, visually impaired, and then our communications disorders. And you'll see as we talk about some of the other states, it's very similar layout for special education. But then how we may try to, our discussion will be how we try to address some of our district needs. Next slide, please. So our neighbors to the northeast, West Virginia, they are very similar to us with the sciences. They do offer a general science to teach very foundational courses in the science contents. However, through discussions, that is limited basically to the freshman level. Anything above that, they require the biology, chemistry, physics. They do have a chemistry and physics combination certificate, but then also have the earth sciences like we do. Their math is a little bit more prescriptive than what we have here in Kentucky. We're much more flexible. They have content areas, so they require them to get certified in the specific algebras as well as geometry. They do have a math comprehensive certificate as well, but then they have the 5 through 9 general math for middle school. Their autism or their special education, they have a specific autism certificate with the awareness of the autism and the variants of students on the spectrum and the requirements that it takes to provide the services for those individuals. So that creates some challenges. However, they have started exploring a comprehensive certificate, and their challenge is trying to ensure that their current special education teachers that don't have the autism endorsement or certification can get that through some type of training. Next slide, please. So our neighbors to the south, Tennessee, again, very specialized in the sciences, much like us. Their math is very aligned to ours as well. However, their grade, their math, their high school is from grade 6 through 12, but then their middle school is the same as ours with 5 through 9. They're much more limited on their special education. They have the interventionist, which is a K-8 and a 612, 2 different types of certificates or grade levels. But then they also have a comprehensive 6 through 12 special education as well. So they the interventionists are, from what I understand, are the teachers that can provide the more intensive services that are needed for individual students. Next slide, please. So Ohio is, again, similar to Kentucky. They have the earth science. However, they look at biology and chemistry and physics through life science and integrated science, so a little bit different approach in how they determine courses and their certifications. Their special education is much like ours with a mild to moderate. However, they do specialize with what would be considered our MSD. There's 2 different levels, and then they have the interventionist as well as a supplemental license for specialty. Next slide, please. Illinois is probably the most different from our neighbors that surround us. They require individuals to obtain a certificate in the content areas, biology, chemistry. They do have earth space science. They have an environmental science and physics as well. The difference with them is that they allow any science content teacher to teach all contents. So it would essentially be the same as a comprehensive certificate. They just do it through permissions rather than a certificate. In their special education, they have two different levels. They have endorsements for the more specialized areas, but then have more of a comprehensive special education certificate. Next slide, please. So many of you may have already heard this. We presented at KASS at the Winter Summit, and this information was provided. However, between October and December, we conducted small group conversations with the field, with our ed prep providers, specific specialists in the math, the science areas, the special education professors. We also met with HR directors, superintendents, principals. We met with teachers from each of the content areas, and sought out feedback on what we may be able to do and to better serve our students and our teachers, and making them marketable as they move forward. Next slide, please. So as part of the work, we looked at preparation, the content areas. We discussed the majors. Does the major for chemistry exceed what is needed for someone to teach high school chemistry, and the same for math, as well as the other science contents. Looked at dual majors, but then minors. Kentucky used to offer certification for someone who had a minor in a content area, and so exploring reviving that potentially, or at least making a recommendation. We looked at the certification, the comprehensive and versus the specialized, and then permissions. We discussed this one's more for centered around mathematics, and so I mentioned that math is very sequential, and the feedback we got from the field was Algebra 1 and geometry were the two areas that caused the most challenges for our districts and our schools in teaching the content. So Algebra 1 and geometry content doesn't change, and a middle school teacher who's certified 5 through 9 could teach to freshman level students. However, while the content didn't change, currently they cannot teach. Their permissions do not allow them to teach the population or the grade bands of 10 through 12. And so based on that and the challenges, we got feedback on those pieces as well. And then future impact. What are the consequences of the decisions we make? We want to be intentional. Yes, we need to help address the shortage and the challenges for our hard to fill positions. However, we don't want to have an extreme knee-jerk reaction and create more issues in the future or different issues. So being very thoughtful and trying to plan to address the needs without making future problems as we move forward. Teacher performance has been discussed, their student performance based on preparation as far as the comprehensive versus the specialized. And then the culture, we had at length discussions in multiple content areas around how we move forward. So it was very specific, and the feedback that was provided was that whatever we do, we consider adding to what we offer now to allow individuals who wanted to specialize in their content areas not be forced into a situation where they don't necessarily want to be. And so special education was a very hot topic centered around this piece, that we may create more issues if we go to a comprehensive certificate and force MSD teachers or LBD teachers to teach outside their comfort zone without the preparation that they need. But then looking forward, do you prevent recruitment or efforts to recruit those individuals into a full comprehensive approach versus the specialized? And so again, a lot of discussion. Overwhelmingly, the feedback So Dr. Fletcher, I do have some reports based on the feedback that we conducted that I can provide to you, and happy to share with the group to demonstrate. Ultimately, the group felt very supportive of a comprehensive science or a general science approach, but then also wanted to keep, as I mentioned, what we're currently doing. Special education is, as I mentioned, there's a lot of layers to that. There's a lot of challenges with IDEA, our state statutes and regulations as well. But ultimately, the difference in services that are needed to be provided for our students. And surprisingly, as a whole, the group felt that a comprehensive certificate for special education is probably not the best move for Kentucky at the moment, but we need to explore other options to help recruit or and encourage even preparation a little differently, that we may be able to offer some dual certifications and things like that, and address it in a different manner rather than making changes to the structure. And then our math was to overwhelmingly was very supportive of adding permissions to the middle school grades 5 through 9 teacher to teach only Algebra 1 and geometry. So it's very specific and limited in what they could teach to grades 10 through 12, but it would allow that. And again, the feeling was, if the content doesn't change, then why wouldn't it? Why shouldn't it allow them to teach that same level of content? Next slide, please. So this is the time we want your feedback based on what you've heard in a very quick manner, but then also some of the feedback, as I mentioned, we've gotten overwhelmingly very supportive of the sciences, and this one is specific around the sciences. But again, our work group met on January 15th again, and again, the same result as far as the conversation. We do support a general science, but they want some specific guidelines. What grade level can they teach to? And so there's some things that we have to look at, and from that manner, as well as the permissions and expanding upon that. But then also what we need to do, the challenge, I think, is preparation. How do we best move forward? And so that's where it was critical that we got feedback from not only our ed prep providers, but those professors in the science areas of chemistry, biology, and physics. And so surprisingly, they were supportive of some change. But then what's the best route to move forward, and how do we allow flexibility, but also meet the needs? So at this time, we're going to allow you to provide some feedback based on your experiences, your challenges at your district, your surrounding districts, and through your conversation. What changes do you feel like could be considered for the science contents, whether it be a comprehensive or a general science approach, or allowing permissions like Illinois, but then also how do we look at the preparation portion of this too? Because this would, either way, it's going to require some major changes for our EPPs, but they are very supportive of it, and so we want to keep them in mind as well. So I think Charlotte looked to saying I may need some help. I can't see all the hands.
It's okay. Good morning, Todd. Charlotte 6, Anchorage Independent. I've been around a long time, but I also recognize that the numbers of physics majors and chemistry majors in the education programs are very small. Do we have that data from our local colleges and universities that share how many education majors they even have, because I think those numbers have greatly reduced. And when that is happening, I appreciate that we want to have these high standards, but while we open up all the options to bring teachers in, I think it sounds maybe like we need to open up certifications, because the cultural impacts of bringing someone in without an education degree has a ripple effect in the school. And so I think we have to open up these education majors to be able to do more content areas, more grade levels based on the numbers in current education programs. And then also, I would say, has anyone ever mentioned that once you have so many years experience, you could perhaps add different content areas based on just your general education experience? That might be another option, but those are just some wonderings that I have. I think I appreciate having high standards, but we're also bringing folks in on option 6 that may not have any experience, and that has a cultural effect. Last point is that our principal programs, I heard Dr. Fletcher say something that we were going to discuss those. Those are the folks in the field who are supporting our teachers. So it's going to take helping our principals support all these wide ranges of certifications, the districts and the school administrators. So I'll stop rambling from there.
So just to answer your question about the physics, so I did provide to our work group just a quick data pull. Over a 3-year period, 19 physics teachers were produced by our EPPs during that 3-year period. So chemistry and chemistry was less than 50, and biology was a little bit higher, but still less than 100. So they see and understand our EPPs specifically. The other thing that came out in these discussions that I think it's important to look at as well, middle school, the approach to middle school certification is different than the pathway for preparing a high school teacher. And in the manner that it is a middle school education major with tracks. So then those tracks are where I'm going to major for the content areas that I want to teach. For high school, it requires the full major for chemistry. And so if you're completing a full chemistry or physics major, I think we can understand why only 19 teachers were produced in the physics content, looking at the financial aspect of it in general. So, but no one has mentioned the years of experience. So that's something that we'll definitely take note of and have conversation on.
So Henry Webb here, I have my hand raised. Like Charlotte, I've been around a minute too, and I've been a high school principal for several years, and now superintendent for many, many years. I've seen this from various perspectives, and I'm going to encourage maximum flexibility. I understand that you said you got some pushback maybe from certain special ed or some areas, but for the life of me, I like the Illinois model. If people want to get the specialized degree in science, they can still teach any of the content areas. There's nothing more frustrating than having to put a full-time sub or a emergency certified or a alternate certified teacher in a classroom when you've got a high quality teacher right there teaching science that could teach that section and successfully, but you can't do it because of certification. So we go put an emergency certified person in there or a full-time sub all year with kids. I've never understood that. So I'm going to ask for maximum flexibility. And as far as the special education goes, that's the one area I think if you gather the data, you're going to see the most alternate certified, the most emergency certified. So providing that flexibility, while I understand the arguments that I may not want to teach this particular section of special ed, I have seen people in my 19 years as superintendent go remove things for their certification because they don't want to teach it or they don't want to teach that grade level. but that's a local issue, a principal issue. And if you don't want to teach that class, go somewhere else. But I'm going to push for maximum flexibility so good teachers can teach kids all across the Commonwealth with certifications. And I'll hush. Thank you.
Thank you.
Russ Tilford, Lyon County. I just want to echo what Henry is saying. I agree completely. Charlotte's right on point too. We've got to give educators flexibility. I know early in my career, I had a teaching minor and felt I was very successful in the classroom, even with that experience. So I do encourage the flexibility any way that we can provide that to our educators. I have to believe a person coming into the profession with a traditional background of teacher preparation, teaching up with a minor is better than some of the alternative programs that we have. I've been doing this a little while, maybe not quite as long as Henry, but certainly I've seen quite a bit over the years. And we've had to hire 2 new science teachers this year. Thankfully, one came to us out of state because her husband was relocated for his work. She's a rock star. The other is an alternative certification and is doing good work, working hard, but still has a huge learning curve. Know he's going to become a great teacher, but it is a different pathway. Would much rather have the traditional background than some of the alternative programs that we currently are offering.
Thank you. Other thoughts on specifically on the sciences? Sheila?
This is Sheila Mitchell, Anderson County. I am a 3rd-generation educator. I understand completely the struggle of both sides. Also remember the days where the lifetime certificate was a real certification where there were a lot of teachers with a lot of experience that went across elementary and middle school lines very successfully. So I agree with Superintendent Webb, Superintendent Six as well. Just with the flexibility, it would be extremely helpful to those of us making those recruiting decisions, but also utilizing our staff to the maximum potential. Our staff are ready and willing a lot of times to help fill those high need areas, and we just can't do it, because of their certification. So just want to echo what my colleague said, agree 100%. Also ask you to consider that lifetime certificate again. I say that every time I get the opportunity because a lot of people do not understand what that means, but it does give a lot of flexibility, and it does help, if there's a need for that. Thanks.
Thank you. So is it feasible? So we're hearing a lot about flexibility. Is it feasible rather than forcing everyone to go to a general science or permissions across the board, that we allow that opportunity in an easier pathway, so to speak? So we have highly qualified now, and the sciences definitely fall in that category. But how we get there, looking at maybe a different approach to do that maybe on a temporary basis or something along those lines, and allow more choice and that flexibility, not only for the district, but then also the individuals as well. So what's your thoughts on that? Henry?
Yeah, I would just say, once again, if I interpreted the Illinois model correctly, if you have a certification currently in one of those areas, then you can teach any area in science. I think that's what they do there.
Yes.
That would be very easily transitioned to the Commonwealth. We could do that tomorrow if it was passed. I understand, and I don't mean this negatively, that the colleges I wouldn't have to go back and pay and take a class or get an endorsement or anything. But I think that could be implemented tomorrow, and I think that's maximum flexibility.
Good.
This is David Trimble. I would, first of all, I want to say thank you for the work on this, because I'm not one of the oldest people in the room, but been doing this for a little bit now, and I remember doing the lead reports and all that, and even I can remember we would have a 5'9" teacher teaching biology 1, and I had to go through each student who was a 10th grader and make sure they failed to make sure she was even allowed to teach it, or she'd kick out. And I'm pretty confident that if there'd been a 10th grader in there who hadn't failed, she probably could teach them too. And
But even bigger than that, I just, I'll use my sister-in-law as an example. I'm actually texting her right now. She has a science degree, but it's a very limited one. And her first text back to me was, I don't know if we want people who didn't have this specific degree teaching that. And I said, well, what about the other options? And once we bring it home to people and say, you know, we can bring somebody out of the field who's never been trained to teach. What do you think? And she kind of came on board with me a little bit with it. I think part of it would be helping people understand, you know, our trained teachers are fantastic. And I think too often we have people sitting in our hallways who could teach classes that we either can't offer, or as has been mentioned by some of the other folks here, who we're having to place people who are less trained. Maybe they have the content knowledge, but the teaching knowledge, I think we all devalue our profession if we don't think that training and being a teacher and teaching kids how to learn is not valuable. And so I think it's great to, we'll have teachers who won't be comfortable. And I think hopefully as administrators and leaders, we'll all be respectful enough to, if someone says, I can't teach chemistry, I have a teaching degree, and I promise you don't want me teaching any sciences. But I think we'll all be respectful enough of people who are limited and uncomfortable. And I would say about the special education, I think we have fantastic people there too. I do think that if we ever cross those paths, there's so much of a legal piece in special education. I would encourage us to really develop a plan where our directors could help train folks if they were ever able to cross over from maybe an LBD to an FMD. That's just so we can make sure we offer everything that's in the law. That was my thought there. But I appreciate the conversation, and I'm with all these folks that I just think we've got teachers that could really step into classrooms that right now they aren't able to because of limitations on certification. And I think they'd be fantastic if we could ever figure that out.
Thank you, sir. Other thoughts on the sciences? Sheila?
I just have a quick question. Well, first of all, with the sciences, I definitely think the boundaries need to be relaxed and allow our content teachers who are very versed across those identified subject areas to be able to teach as they feel comfortable. And I think the majority of us, and as administrators, and we work with our high school principals quite well, to know those boundaries and work very hard to try to get the most high quality teacher in the classroom. Sometimes that high quality teacher is you know, may not have the certification needed, and we all know that. We've all seen that as well. But my question really to you, Mr. Davis, is around the permissions. When you mentioned that earlier, can you elaborate on that a little bit? Would that mean that, for example, I am a certified 5 through 9 teacher, middle school. I always taught 5th grade. I felt like pretty confidently if I was needed, I could probably go down and teach 4th grade or maybe even 3rd grade pretty proficiently. So, you know, I'm a big advocate to release those grade level boundary lines for that very reason. I may not want to go up and teach high school, you know, past the 9th grade, but I might feel more comfortable moving down. So I think a lot of that, those permissions might be important, and I'm not sure if I'm understanding correctly what you mean by those permissions, but I'd like just a little bit of additional information on what that means. Is it that we work and we give those permissions through Education Professional Standards Board based on experience and or what the certification and or the college has deemed? What is that? Just a little bit more information on that, please.
Yeah, sure. So we have to look at that through two different lenses. So when you talk about the math content, those are very specific, again, due to the sequential courses. Algebra 1 and geometry are considered freshman level courses, and with a 5 through 9 teacher can teach that content to, you know, to the freshman level. And so while the content doesn't change, and I believe somebody mentioned it earlier that, you know, they had students that either failed or came in that didn't have that course, one of those courses completed, but then didn't have anyone that was certified to teach it based on the permissions. And so again, due to the sequentialness of the courses, it being considered freshman level content, the thought is Algebra 1 and geometry, very limited to them, would be allowed to teach that content of those two courses to 10th, 11th, and 12th grade only. So it would be very limited on the permission side of things. And so that wouldn't necessarily change anything related to their certificate or their preparation, because again, we're not preparing to teach calculus to high school and so forth. And they're focused on the content and the content level. For the sciences, like Illinois, what they do, that's a much different conversation. And the things that have to be considered there are, as a chemistry major, is there enough biology coursework that's required? Is there any biology coursework at all that's required? Chemistry, there tends to be some types of physics in the preparation, but again, that's determined by each institution. That's another challenge that our EPPs face with it being separate, that they have to complete a full major in those content areas. And so looking at permissions, that there's no real clear-cut way other than what Illinois is doing. That's the only one we know of right now. So if they are certified in one of the sciences, they can teach all at the high school level. So that looks very different than math. Now, Oregon, I mentioned earlier, I found out last week, they are very specific in allowing them to teach to 11th grade only, and then the specialized area for 12th grade. The other thing that came up in our discussions around a general science to ensure, one, that we don't handcuff our teachers, that if we offer the general science, how do we ensure that they receive enough coursework for them to specialize in an area? So maybe an area of concentration. So general science with concentration in chemistry or physics, to allow them to pursue AP and dual credit requirements. Because if they don't get enough coursework in their preparation for general science, then they don't qualify for those advanced degrees, and then we handcuff ourselves from that perspective. So a little bit different conversation around that. So there's a lot of moving parts and layers to the conversation, related to certification, but we also have to really consider the preparation and the ripple effect that it has as well. Does that help?
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay, sure. Anything else on the sciences?
Well, I'm sorry, Henry
No, go
Webb
ahead.
again. I would just say again, I appreciate what you just shared regarding the Illinois model, but with all due respect, we don't have many physics AP classes now or dual credit classes. So
Right.
the ideal, I would hope, is that we get a strong teacher. I agree with Mr. Trimble. A strong teacher with strong pedagogy that has strong science skills can pick up content and teach. That's a local district and a local school principal, and the teacher can make those decisions. Maximum flexibility allows that. What we have now, if you can't find a physics teacher, you don't teach physics. Your school can't have it, so kids leave your school and goes to another school. Or so we're losing kids, or we're putting a full-time sub in these classes until we find somebody, or emergency certified. So I would just encourage us not to think so one-dimensional about, I think once again, the goal should be to get a teacher with high pedagogy and yes, science skills in with kids, and not make sure every teacher teaches physics has enough to be an engineer. And I'll quit, I promise.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, looking at what's required for the major, maybe a physics education major versus a physics major or a math education major. So for instance, calculus 2 and 3 that are taught at the higher ed level are never used, in most cases are never used in a high school classroom, and never would be. And so for them to have to complete courses that aren't necessarily applicable to the setting, Is that a deterrent to the major? Is there other ways that we could look at this? And so we do have three majors right now that are considered education majors that are offered by institutions here in Kentucky. And one's physics education specifically. So they reduced the number of courses that were required in the physics content. A math education, again, looking at what was needed and eliminating what wasn't needed for the high school level. And then chemistry education is offered by another institution as well. So, so that based on what you just said, Mr. Webb, I think that's what you were conveying, but please correct me if I'm wrong on part of it. Anyway, Mr. Burchett, I think you had your hand raised.
Well, again, I would just like to echo the same things that Dr. Webb and Ms. Mitchell and others have said. We've got an immediate, absolute immediate need for flexibility today. And then it sounds like we're also working on maybe a long-term future plan, which involves getting EPPs all on board on the same, with the same set of requirements for these basic credentialed areas in science and math. And that could require legislative action to force that, or the flexibility provided by EPSB, which forces their hand as well. So I think we've got competing issues. I'm not saying that everybody doesn't have interest in a positive outcome. We all want the best teacher we can get in our classrooms to teach these classes. And I've got 2 science teachers that will be retiring at the end of next year. And the replacements aren't out there for them. One's chemistry and one is biology. But while I might be able to fill one, it's going to be very challenging to fill the other one. And these needs are now present today. We can't wait. It takes immediate action. And I appreciate the conversation, but we've got to get moving on this as a state. So thank you for your efforts, and please do everything you can to bring all people to the table, including the presidents of the universities and the EPP directors. So thank you.
Thank you. I will share our EPPs are very supportive of the change. They actually started conversations before we did, and how they may help try to drive change as well. So, Dr. Fletcher.
Yeah, I have a few comments here. First of all, I have a math major and a physics minor. I have teaching certifications in both. So after I retire, if anybody wants to give me a call, I'll be happy to entertain any type of contract, anything of that nature. Just kidding about that. But seriously, I taught AP Calculus, and honestly, I was a math major, and so I'm going to push back on this having to be specialized. But at no point did I ever teach Lobachevsky geometry or any sort of vectors when it comes to mathematics. I did that in physics some, but when you teach AP classes, you go to a week-long boot camp, if you will, of content in order to teach that AP class. So, I'm saying that because I don't think that, when it comes to science, I don't think it's necessary for you to have a biology major to teach AP biology. So I really like the idea, and I'm going to echo what Henry, and I'm going to pull in what Charla said and also what Henry said too. I really like the idea of that general science degree that allows people, but that's a future fix. And I also want to pull in what Charlotte said earlier. If we're going to look at really opening up, what about permissions for maybe someone that's taught science for 2 to 3 years right now? They've proven themselves, and they've had some echoes, and maybe they've had 3 years of experience, and then maybe they could have that Illinois model of giving permissions to teach other areas. So I think that, I think districts would do that anyway. I think before I would select a biology major to teach my chemistry, I would like to see how they did in the biology classroom first and then switch them over. But I think that's something maybe to look at, maybe years of experience and then permission to pull in to give them those others. And again, I wouldn't want it to be 5 or 10 years. I'd want it to be very low because we need that maximum flexibility now, in my opinion. So I love the idea of the general science. That way people have a survey as they go in. But if you're going, even with that, if you're going to go in and teach AP chemistry, you still go on to that AP boot camp once you're hired. I think I went to Maryville, Tennessee for a week on AP calculus, and I learned more about teaching AP calculus there than I did in any of my classes. As a matter of fact, as a physics minor, at no point did I teach statics or did I teach thermodynamics. I taught what was in engineering physics 1, engineering physics 2 in my classes. So again, maximum flexibility, absolutely agree with that. The general science degree, I really like that. And as far as the pushback on the AP, there's still those additional camps that teachers can go to if they want to teach AP chemistry, AP biology, and AP physics. So my thoughts there.
Thank you. Sheila.
This is Sheila Mitchell again. I just have to make sure that I'm not misunderstanding, because with the certifications, I just heard Commissioner Fletcher say it's a future fix, but does it have to be a future fix? So should we all just, because I was assuming when you were speaking about the biology, all the chemistry, all of those science majors, that if this passed and we were able to have that flexibility, that it would start with all of our current teachers. So regardless of their certification in physics, biology, chemistry, they're all very specified and they do a great job. I would love, like I can't remember which superintendent said, one section to be taught by another teacher. I would love to be able to do that right now. We have the need for that right now. So I just want to make sure that if we're talking about doing it, for example, I gave my example of being the 5 through 9 teacher, being able to teach 5th grade only. And I remember those days. I was only able to teach 5th grade. I would love, the opportunity when I retire to be able to go back and maybe teach a lower grade level, if that's something that I would want to do, to help a school out. So that's what I was hitting on when I was talking about that lifetime certificate, because we have such a need for these retired teachers to come back and be able to help us in, areas of which we're weak in or areas which can't find certified teachers in, whether it be middle, high school, or elementary. So I just want to make sure that I understood that. And is that something that is being considered, not just for future? Okay. Making sure I understood.
And to clarify my point, Sheila, I was saying if we just looked at the certifications and we waited until those students came out, that would be a future fix.
Right.
If we really need those permissions now in order to fix what's going on now. So that was my point. If you just did the certification of the general science certification, we'd have to wait for those students to go through the programs and then get their certifications. Whereas we need some type of relief right now as far as how those permissions, in my opinion, again, that's going to go through EPSB and things of that nature. But in my opinion, I think that we need some help now, some flexibility now too.
So, and that's been, and that's been the discussion. One, how do we move forward? What's the best way moving forward? But then how do we bring those on board that are already certified? How do we allow those opportunities, the same opportunity, but it's going to have to be through a different manner, right? And it's got to be feasible. It can't necessarily be going back and getting a minor and because that's not extremely helpful for immediate resolution as well. So.
Todd, I would say, and I know social studies and science are not the same, but in a lot of ways they are, because they're less building upon each other in different types of content. And I know a couple of us on here have a social studies degree, and there was about 9 things I was qualified to teach. And to be honest, in the time I was in the classroom, everything I taught was a subject area I had the least amount of classes on. My major was in history. I never taught a history class in the whole time I was there. My minor was in sociology. I never taught a sociology class. And I was never the Valvoline teacher of the year. I'll throw that, but I think I was actually pretty good. And I'll brag on that a little bit. But it was partially because I had to work hard to learn it at times, but I'd also had classes and all that. And so I think that when we look at social studies, it's not much different than what we're talking about with science right now. these science teachers that we have in our classrooms have had all these different contents areas. We called them at the time in 04 that I got a degree, basis areas, I think is what we called them. And so I taught civics, and I had one class in political science, but I had that basis area. I was able to teach it. I had to learn a little extra. Harry's laughing. I think Harry thinks I wasn't a very good teacher, but he doesn't know. He was a teacher when I was in high school. But I can get you evidence. But anyway, I would just say that I would just say that I think we've got a decent model with it with social studies, because as a social studies teacher, there was a whole lot of things that I could teach that if we did social studies the way we do science, I would have been limited to 2 classes and nobody would have needed me. But I was able to be a lot more beneficial to our students because I'd had those classes at a high level, and then had to learn. And I'll also make a motion for Sheila's lifetime certificate. I'm all for that. And you come down here, Sheila. We'll hire you in Pikeville.
I appreciate that, and I have to continue to echo that, because I do think it's a game changer for a lot of folks that need the retired teachers, as well as for crossing those lines between elementary and middle school. I have a lot of need for middle school teachers and the expertise there, and a lot of times my elementary folks cross those lines, and it's perfect because it helps fill some of those skill deficits that normally I'm not so certain that middle school teachers understood or understand, so that we can make sure that the children are prepared and ready for content learning on grade level, no matter what, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, whatever. So, again, I think it's critically important for those boundary lines to be lax quite a bit for that reason. That's just another really good example. I've got an elementary teacher who I hired being a middle school coach right now. She's doing a dang good job. She's really helped our middle school improve. I've got another teacher that I had teaching 4th grade at elementary school doing intervention at middle school as well. So they are very successful. It's just really critically important for us to think on that level of what does that look like and how can it be beneficial. And my middle school principal, nor would I want to put an unsuccessful teacher either way, whether it be elementary to middle, elementary or middle to elementary and on up, in a position of which they're unsuccessful. So, I think a lot of that has to be understood, that we take it very serious. We're all very competitive. We're trying to find, high quality teachers. And sometimes, one of the best teachers I hired was a 4th grade science teacher. She had a degree in biology. I wish I had more of her, because the science scores were through the roof. She understood what she was teaching at a very high level. So, she's a high quality teacher first and foremost, but she also had the content background knowledge that, just took it to the next level that most elementary teachers really, may or may not have. But I think considering that and making sure that we're allowing our experienced teachers to have those opportunities and not making it hard on superintendents to try to find those folks to help serve in those roles across grade levels.
So Sheila, I do want to mention, you've mentioned retired teachers. So we do have the emeritus certificate that that's a 10-year certificate for retirees, and then it can be renewed again. So it gives them 20 years beyond their retirement. So, or whenever they apply for it. So that would work in the same fashion. They receive that, and it's a certificate for whatever they were certified in when they retired, and they just show retirement. And so we can issue that. It's a $25 certificate for 10 years.
Which I appreciate, and I thank you all so much for that. What I'm going for is, again, relaxing those boundary lines on that certification, because again, I'm a middle school teacher. I teach by certification. I should only be able to teach social studies and language arts, and I'm a dang good math teacher for 5th grade. So I say that based on data. And somebody, could benefit from me going in and being an interventionist, a math teacher for elementary. And so I think we don't think about those things until we see examples, real life examples of elementary versus high school versus middle school serving in those roles and what they're really, really good and strong at. And I think giving the superintendents a little bit of flexibility there would go a long way in helping us fill those positions, but also helping us, you know, in those areas until we can find somebody that's certified.
And there may be some, based on the scenario you just shared, there may be some things that there's some flexibility now. So I'll reach out and we can discuss that and get some more understanding about what you're trying to do or need to do. And then I can help work through that.
Thank you.
Any other feedback? I think we've addressed special ed and math as well. That was the next question, but if there's anything additional you want to add. Great conversation. And again, I wanted your unsolicited feedback. And so I wanted to share some of the conversations, but I didn't want to share all of it. So everything you're bringing up has been brought up in some form or fashion in our discussions, and all things are being considered. Nothing's been decided, you know, as far as the work group and that recommendation at this point. And so trying to work through the logistics of it and considering all this feedback is our next step. So any other feedback? All right, if you'll advance to the next slide, please. Here's my contact information. Please, if you've got comments or suggestions or concerns even, please reach out. Sharon Salzman is my assistant director. She's involved with this work as well. Reach out to either one of us. Happy to jump on a call if you want to, and discuss one-on-one or small groups if you got a group, but continue to want to seek out our feedback from our folks in the field and value your opinions. So with that, I will turn it back over to the chair. Thank you all.
All right. Thank you, Todd. We appreciate your help and assistance with certification. And I want to thank everybody for a very productive meeting. Our next meeting will be March 31st. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right. We will now have a roll call vote for adjournment.
All right, and last time, again, please state your name and your vote. Brian Alexander,
Yes.
Kirk Biggerstaff,
Kirk Biggerstaff, yes.
Harry Burchett,
Harry Burchett, yes.
Tom Cochran,
Tom Cochran, yes.
Will Hodges, Dennis Messer,
Dennis Messer, yes.
Sheila Mitchell,
Sheila Mitchell, yes.
Charla Six,
Charla Six, yes.
Russ Tilford,
Russ Tilford, yes.
David Trimble,
David Trimble, yes.
and Henry Webb.
Henry Webb, yes.
Motion carries. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you all.